in 2010, we made the discovery of this gene serendipitously in collaboration with Shaheen Rafi, and the gene's name is SLITTRAK5. The CTSC grant was great because it sort of helped us sort of connect what was going on at a system-wide level to a molecular level, with the idea of trying to translate this into sort of some type of clinically relevant target. And this is what we were able to do, and through the grant. And from the grant, we were able to get federal funding through NIH as well as foundation funding, and was able to publish a high-profile paper from it. It is a molecule I still work in my lab, and multiple labs across the country, including Stanford, Harvard, University of Pittsburgh, all work on this gene. And it would not have been possible without first getting the initial preliminary data that I was able to get through the CTSC grant. Working with all the staff and all the investigators within the CTSC has been also highly rewarding. And I think it also stems from just the inspired leadership of Juliana Imperator McGinley, who is just such a visionary for us.
The CTSC has been very helpful in terms of making our clinical trials successful. And once the clinical trials are successful and you can publish the work, it helps you in terms of getting the next grant and publishing the next paper. And CTSC has played an important role in that. And the CTSC resources are great, and the people who work in the CTSC under the leadership of Julian has been terrific. And so my advice is to go meet with the leadership of the CTSC and see what CTSC can do for you to help you in your studies.
Grants gave us the stepping stones to be able to build more sophisticated platforms over time and take it into the clinic and work towards commercializing it. That's basically what the CTSC provided us. It's amazing that a center like that provides so many resources for people to be able to be successful in the translational and clinical arena. Many individuals have provided testimonials over the years about the CTSC giving them their start in their careers. Many young investigators that without the support of the CTSC, it would have been incredibly difficult. And I think there's a lot of truth to that, because if you go and you try to apply for NIH funding and you don't have enough data, it's, often you need the monies to get the initial pilot data to then go apply for federal funding.
CTSC has been fundamentally important to my research group because it's provided funding to allow us to explore new ways that we can help patients with these sorts of defects. We've had a variety of different funding from CTSC. Some of that funding has supported my postdoctoral fellows. It's allowed them to appreciate more the translational aspects of their research. It's exposed them to collaborators at different institutions in the New York area. And it's also given them a different perspective, I think, on what they need to do to translate their research in such a way that it can positively impact patient care.
We recently published a very large multinational study in the New England Journal of Medicine based in part on data that we collected through the CTSC over these many years. CTSC was critical to all the work that we've done to look at natural history of recovery from coma. The work that we published in the New England Journal was sort of a culmination of many years of studies and papers, testing different methods, discovering ways to make these measurements since the 1990s. And we couldn't have done any of it without the CTSC, because the CTSC paid those bed costs, which would have been impossible to charge to an NIH grant proposal and get it accepted.
fact that the CTSC was willing to take a chance on a young researcher looking into this rare disease area was really amazing and helped me really start my research in myeloproliferative neoplasms. I think it's very hard, especially in this day and age where resources are limited, to get funding for rare disease work. And MPNs in children are really rare diseases. And I don't think I would have been able to accomplish any of my goals that I had set for myself if I hadn't gotten that initial funding and training from the CTSC.
I was part of the 2-year SCALE2 program where I did a master's along with starting my research project. That's the project I started with the CTSC, and that later led to my NIA funding and my Beeson Award. Of note, I am the first otolaryngologist to receive a Beeson Award. This would not have been possible without the support of the CTSC, and for the CTSC to really guide me through also learning the skills for doing clinical research well.
I was essentially studying full-time and working full-time. And so in order to give myself an opportunity and sort of breathing room to focus purely on research, the CTSC's funding through the KL2 enabled me to do that. The project that I got funded through my KL2 was a health services research project that focused on the impacts of the Affordable Care Act on hospital-related efficiencies and operational abilities, particularly in relation to how it affected vulnerable populations.
The CTSC really generously supported my work with a grant writing coach to help me edit and write my first R01 application. And that was really a huge support and a huge deal for me. I think there are lots of potential barriers for anyone interested in clinical research, especially for physician scientists, clinician researchers. Funding is a huge, I don't want to say problem, but it's a huge potential barrier. Getting funding to protect our time, getting funding to support the work that we're proposing. I think I have been really, really lucky to have incredible supports in place from the CTSC. There are people championing me and my work despite these barriers and really trying to work with me to make it possible. And so I feel really grateful for that.
I was transitioning to do my postdoc in the lab in the laboratory of Mark Rubin, and I wanted to study the mechanisms of a resistance, and that work was eventually supported by a CTSC KL2 grant, which really supported the work, but also supported my career development at the time in my transition from postdoc to instructor to then having my own lab, and actually led to some of the data that was foundational for determining my research direction. He just published another paper looking at ApoBAC3-induced mutagenesis and now looking also at extrachromosomal DNA. And that paper was just published in Nature.
One of the nice things about Heart to Heart is exciting for me because I've kind of been on the other end of that, where you have an issue and it's like, well, it's 3 months to see a doctor. That's not really that ideal. Like, is anybody doing something? And so it was kind of cool to see this. We're like, oh, we are doing something. Going out to see people who have seen no doctor, who have no access to care, I don't think you can really put a price on that.